Cheers to the happy couple. Oops.
The emergency room doors burst open at 2 in the morning, and what stumbled through them would haunt the night staff for years to come. A girl, no more than 17, barefoot and bleeding, her designer dress torn at the seams, mascara streaking down a face that had graced the covers of Society magazines just weeks before. She didn't speak, she couldn't speak. She just stood there in the fluorescent light, trembling like a wounded animal, while nurses rushed toward her with blankets and gentle words that bounced off her like rain off glass. This was Vivienne Ashford, daughter of tech mogul Richard Ashford, worth $32 billion, and this was the night everything changed. This was the night that would eventually lead a small-town waitress named Maya Chen to walk into a world she never imagined. Armed with nothing but stubbornness, and a heart that refused to give up on people everyone else had already written off. If you believe in the power of human connection, if you've ever felt invisible, or wondered if one person can truly make a difference, then stay with me through this story. And if it touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Because we're building a community here that believes in hope, healing, and the extraordinary things that happen when ordinary people refuse to quit on each other. Maya Chen had been working double shifts at Rosie's Diner for 3 years. Ever since her mother's cancer treatment had drained their savings and left them drowning in medical bills. At 26, she should have been finishing her degree in social work. Should have been building a career. Should have been doing all the things her mother had sacrificed so much for her to do. Instead, she was refilling coffee cups and serving pie to truckers at 3 in the morning, her feet aching, her back sore, her dreams filed away in a drawer she tried not to open too often. But Maya had learned something important during those years of slinging hash and wiping down counters. She had learned to see people. Really see them. While other servers mechanically took orders and delivered food, Maya noticed the businessman who came in every Thursday with red-rimmed eyes and ordered whiskey instead of coffee. She saw the elderly woman who always sat in the corner booth, making a single cup of soup last 2 hours because she was lonely. She recognized the teenager who wore long sleeves even in summer, hiding marks that spoke of pain no child should carry. And she never, ever looked away. The night Maya first heard about Vivienne Ashford, she was wiping down the counter while the television mounted above the pie case droned on about the morning news. She wasn't really paying attention, until she heard the news anchor's voice take on that particular tone of salacious concern that media personalities use when reporting on the downfall of the rich and famous. Vivienne Ashford, daughter of billionaire tech entrepreneur Richard Ashford, remains in psychiatric care following what sources close to the family describe as a complete psychological breakdown. The 17-year-old was found wandering in a nightclub district 3 weeks ago in what appeared to be a dissociative state. She has not spoken since. Maya glanced up at the screen and saw a photo of a girl with perfect features and dead eyes. The kind of eyes Maya had seen too many times before. Eyes that had given up. The news report continued with the usual speculation. Talking heads debating whether it was drugs or pressure, or the inevitable result of too much privilege and too little supervision. They showed footage of Richard Ashford, a silver-haired man with the kind of jaw that looked carved from granite, leaving the hospital surrounded by security. He didn't look at the cameras. He looked like a man who had built empires but couldn't build a bridge to his own daughter. Maya's coworker, Denise, snorted as she refilled the napkin dispensers. Rich people problems, she said with the casual dismissiveness of someone who had never had the luxury of any problem that wasn't about survival. She's got everything anyone could want and she's falling apart. Meanwhile, we're working ourselves to death just to keep the lights on. Maya understood the sentiment. God knows she understood it. But she couldn't quite join in the contempt. She kept looking at that photo, at those eyes. And all she could think was that money couldn't buy your way out of certain kinds of pain. Money couldn't fix a broken mind or heal a wounded soul. Money was just money, and suffering was suffering, and somewhere in that expensive hospital, a girl was drowning, and no one seemed to know how to throw her a rope. She thought about Vivienne Ashford on and off for the next few days. The way you might think about a character in a tragic news story. With distant sympathy and the vague sense that it was terrible but not your problem. Maya had enough problems of her own. Her mother's cancer had come back, metastasized to her bones, and the doctors were talking about experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Maya was picking up every shift she could get. Sleeping 4 hours a night, living on coffee and the determination that had carried her family through every crisis before. She didn't have time to worry about billionaire daughters. But then fate, or coincidence, or whatever force arranges the collision of unlikely lives, intervened. Maya was leaving the hospital after visiting her mother, exhausted and heartsick from watching the woman, who had raised her alone, who had worked 3 jobs to give her daughter opportunities, waste away in a bed that smelled of antiseptic and resignation. She was walking through the lobby with her head down, trying not to cry, when she nearly collided with someone coming around the corner. She looked up to apologize and found herself face to face with Richard Ashford himself. He was surrounded by the usual entourage. Men in dark suits speaking into earpieces, assistants clutching tablets and phones, a whole parade of people whose job it was to manage a billionaire's life. But what struck Maya wasn't the security or the obvious wealth. It was the look on Ashford's face. It was the same look her mother had sometimes. Late at night when she thought Maya was asleep. The look of someone carrying an impossible weight. And not knowing how much longer they could bear it. Their eyes met for just a second, and in that second, Maya did something she would later struggle to explain even to herself. She reached out and touched his arm, a brief, gentle touch, the kind you might give to a friend who's hurting. "I hope she gets better," Maya said quietly. "Your daughter. I hope she finds her way back." Richard Ashford stopped. His entire entourage stopped. They all stared at this random woman in a waitress uniform and a worn winter coat who had dared to touch a man worth $32 billion. Who had dared to speak to him like he was just another human being struggling through the worst day of his life. For a moment, Maya thought security would intervene, would pull her away and maybe have her arrested for harassment, or something equally absurd. But Ashford just looked at her with those exhausted, desperate eyes and said, "Thank you." Then he was gone, swept away by his people. And Maya was left standing in the hospital lobby feeling like she'd just stepped out of a dream and back into reality. She thought that would be the end of it. Another random encounter in a random day, meaningful only in the way all moments of unexpected connection are meaningful, and then forgotten. She was wrong. 2 days later, a man in an expensive suit walked into Rosie's diner during Maya's evening shift and asked to speak with her. He introduced himself as Marcus Webb, head of security for the Ashford family, and he had a proposition that sounded completely insane. Richard Ashford wanted to hire her to work with his daughter. Maya actually laughed. She couldn't help it. "I'm a waitress," she said. "I'm not a therapist or a counselor or whatever it is you think he needs." Marcus Webb, who had the calm, measured demeanor of someone who had seen everything and been surprised by, simply nodded. "Mr. Ashford is aware of your qualifications, or lack thereof. He's also aware that his daughter has been treated by 17 different mental health professionals over the past 3 weeks. Psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists who specialize in trauma, experts in selective mutism, people with credentials that could wallpaper a mansion. None of them have been able to reach her. She won't speak. She barely eats. She doesn't acknowledge anyone's presence. She just sits and stares at nothing. Like she's somewhere else entirely. And he thinks I can help because I said something nice to him in a hallway." Maya shook her head. "That's not how this works. Your daughter needs real help, professional help. She's getting professional help," Webb said patiently. "Round the clock. The best that money can buy. What she doesn't have is someone who looks at her the way you looked at Mr. Ashford in that hospital lobby. Like she's a person, not a problem to be solved. He's desperate, Miss Chen. He's watched his daughter disappear into herself, and he doesn't know how to bring her back. He's willing to try anything. including hiring a waitress with no credentials who showed kindness to a stranger. Maya wanted to say no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea, that she had no business getting involved in something so far beyond her experience. That she should stick to her world and let the rich people handle their own problems. But she thought about that photo she'd seen on the news. Those dead eyes. And she thought about all the people she'd noticed over the years. The ones everyone else looked past. And she thought about her mother, lying in a hospital bed, fighting a losing battle because they couldn't afford the treatment that might save her life. Maya asked, hating herself a little for asking, but knowing she had to. Webb named a figure that made Maya's knees weak. It was more than she made in a year. It was enough to cover her mother's treatment. It was enough to change everything. Just to be clear, Maya said carefully, I have no idea what I'm doing, I can't promise results. I can't even promise I won't make things worse. Mr. Ashford understands the risk. He's willing to take it if you are. Maya thought about it for exactly 10 seconds, which was probably 9 seconds longer than she really needed. When do I start? The Ashford estate was the kind of place Maya had only seen in movies, all rolling lawns and fountains in a house that looked more like a museum than a home. Webb drove her there himself, briefing her along the way on what to expect. Vivienne had been released from psychiatric care into her father's custody 2 days ago. Under strict conditions, she had a full medical team on site, a psychiatrist who checked in daily, nurses available around the clock. She was physically healthy, she just wasn't there. She's in what they call a dissociative state. Webb explained as they drove through gates that probably cost more than Maya's childhood home. It's like her mind has gone somewhere her body can't follow. She doesn't respond to questions. Doesn't react to her environment. Sometimes she'll eat if someone physically places food in her hands, but mostly she just sits. The doctors say it's likely triggered by trauma. But they don't know what trauma. Vivienne's life, from the outside at least, has been privileged. The best schools, unlimited resources, every opportunity. From the outside. Maya repeated. What about from the inside? Webb was quiet for a moment. I've worked for the Ashford family for 8 years. I've watched Vivienne grow from a child into a young woman. And I've watched her become more and more invisible. Even though she was surrounded by people all the time. Her father loves her, I have no doubt about that. But Richard Ashford is a man who built a tech empire from nothing. He understands code and capital and strategy. He doesn't understand teenage girls. He doesn't understand that sometimes love isn't enough if you don't know how to show it in ways that matter. They pulled up to the house. And Maya felt her stomach clench with anxiety, and something that might have been excitement. She was about to step into a world completely foreign to her. To try to help someone she didn't know with problems she didn't understand. It should have terrified her. And it did. But it also felt right in a way she couldn't explain. Richard Ashford met them in a room that was probably meant to be warm and welcoming, but felt more like a very expensive waiting room. He looked even more tired than he had in the hospital, the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. Miss Chen. He said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. I know this is highly irregular. That's one word for it. Maya said, shaking his hand. Mr. Ashford, I need you to understand something before we go any further. I'm not a professional. I'm not trained for this. If I do this, I'll be making it up as I go, following my instincts, and my instincts might be completely wrong. My daughter has had the best professionals money can buy. Ashford said quietly. And she's getting worse, not better. Your instincts can't possibly do more damage than expert certainty already has. He paused, and something in his face crumpled just slightly. She used to talk to me. When she was little, she used to tell me everything. About her day, about her friends. About the books she was reading and the dreams she had. And somewhere along the way, I got too busy. Too focused on building the next thing, making the next deal. I thought I was doing it for her, giving her security and opportunity. But I was really just avoiding the hard work of actually being there. And now she's gone somewhere I can't reach her, and I don't know how to bring her back. Maya felt her throat tighten. This was a kind of pain she understood. The pain of loving someone and not knowing how to save them. Where is she? Ashford led her through the house. Past rooms filled with art and furniture, that probably cost more than Maya would earn in a lifetime. Past windows that looked out over gardens that seemed to go on forever. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, and walked down a hallway lined with photographs. Maya glimpsed images of a little girl with dark curls and a bright smile, that same girl growing older, the smile getting smaller, more practiced, less real. Until in the most recent photos she looked like a beautiful mannequin, present but not there. They stopped at a door at the end of the hall. Ashford knocked gently. Then opened it. Vivienne. There's someone I'd like you to meet. The room was lovely in that carefully designed way that showed money but not personality. Cream-colored walls, expensive furniture, fresh flowers on the dresser. And sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the garden below, was Vivienne Ashford. She was smaller than Maya had expected, delicate in a way that made her look breakable. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders. And she was wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe. She didn't turn when they entered. Didn't acknowledge them in any way. She just sat there, perfectly still like a statue of a girl rather than a girl herself. Vivienne, this is Maya Chen, Ashford said. His voice careful and hopeful and breaking around the edges. She's going to be spending some time with you. I thought you might like some company. Nothing, no response. Not even a flicker of recognition that someone had spoken. Maya felt Ashford's disappointment like a physical thing. He stood there for a moment, hoping, and then his shoulders sagged. I'll leave you two alone, he said quietly. If you need anything at all, just press the button by the door. Someone will come immediately. Then he was gone, and Maya was alone with a girl who wasn't really there. For a long moment, Maya just stood in the doorway. Unsure of what to do. All her instincts from the diner, all those years of reading people and finding the right words, seemed useless here. This wasn't about reading a customer's mood, and knowing whether they wanted friendly banter or quiet service. This was about reaching into whatever dark place Vivienne had retreated to, and somehow convincing her it was safe to come back. Maya pulled up a chair and sat down a few feet away from Vivienne, not too close, not invading her space but close enough to be present. Hi. She said softly. I'm Maya. Your dad asked me to come spend some time with you, which I guess you probably think is weird. It is weird. I'm a waitress at a diner called Rosie's about 40 miles from here, and until a few days ago, I'd never been in a house like this. Never met anyone like your father. Never thought I'd be sitting in a billionaire's mansion trying to figure out what to say to someone who can't or won't talk back. Vivienne didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window, on the garden beyond, on something Maya couldn't see. I'm not gonna pretend I understand what you're going through, Maya continued. I don't. Everyone's pain is their own. And no one else can really know what it feels like from the inside. But I do know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely isolated. And I know what it's like when the world expects you to be okay and you're just not. Still nothing. But Maya hadn't really expected anything. This wasn't about getting an immediate response. This was about showing up, about being present, about refusing to treat Vivienne like she was already gone. I'm going to come back tomorrow, Maya said. And the day after that. And the day after that. I'm going to sit here with you, and I'm going to talk to you. And I'm not going to expect anything from you. You don't have to talk. You don't have to do anything. I'm just going to be here. Because I think maybe you've spent too long being alone, and even if you don't want company, I think you might need it. She sat there for another hour, not talking much, just being there. Occasionally mentioning small things like the birds she could see in the garden, or the way the light was changing as afternoon shifted toward evening. When she finally left, Vivienne was in exactly the same position, unchanged and unreachable. But Maya had made a promise, and she wasn't the kind of person who broke promises. She came back the next day, and the next and the next, every afternoon. She would drive out to the Ashford estate, walk up to Vivienne's room, and sit with a girl who gave no indication that she knew Maya existed. Sometimes Maya would talk about her own life, about growing up with a single mother who worked herself to exhaustion to give her daughter a better future, about the regular customers at the diner, and the small dramas that played out over coffee and pie, about her mother's illness and her fear of losing the person who mattered most. Sometimes she would read aloud from books she brought with her, novels and poetry and essays that had meant something to her over the years. Sometimes she would just sit in silence, keeping Vivienne company in her unreachable solitude. The medical staff watched her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The psychiatrist, a distinguished man named Dr. Ashford, pulled Maya aside after her first week. "I appreciate what you're trying to do," he said in a tone that suggested he didn't appreciate it at all. "But I feel obligated to tell you that you're wasting your time. Vivienne is experiencing a dissociative episode. She needs professional intervention. Medication, structured therapy. Sitting and talking to her like she's a friend who's having a bad day isn't going to bring her back." "Has professional intervention brought her back?" Maya asked, trying to keep the edge out of voice and not quite succeeding. Dr. Montgomery stiffened. "These things take time. We're developing a treatment plan that." "How much time?" "Maya, long has she been like this?" 3 weeks. 4. "And in that time, with all your professional intervention and structured therapy, has she said a single word? Has she shown any sign of improvement?" "Mental health treatment isn't linear," the doctor said coldly. "There are setbacks and plateaus. But eventually, with proper care." "I'm not saying she doesn't need proper care," Maya said, softer now. "I'm not saying you don't know what you're doing. I'm just saying that maybe she also needs someone who isn't treating her like a diagnosis. Someone who is just there, no agenda, no treatment plan, no expectations. Maybe that's not going to work either. But it's not going to hurt." Dr. Montgomery looked like he wanted to argue. But Richard Ashford had been clear that Maya was to be given complete freedom to try her approach. So the doctor simply pressed his lips together and walked away, leaving Maya to her apparently futile vigil. The days blurred together. Maya would work her morning shift at the diner, grab a few hours of sleep, then drive out to the estate to sit with Vivienne. Her own life was falling apart around the edges. She was exhausted, barely keeping up with bills, worried sick about her mother, but she kept showing up. Partly because Richard Ashford was paying her more money than she'd ever seen. Yes. But also because something about Vivienne had gotten under her skin. This girl who had everything and nothing, who was drowning in plain sight while everyone debated the best way to throw her a life preserver. 2 weeks in, something changed. It was small. So small that Maya almost missed it. She was reading aloud from a book of poetry. Mary, Oliver had saved Maya's own life once, when the world had felt too heavy, and she'd needed reminding that there was still beauty in it. She read Wild Geese, that perfect poem about belonging to the family of things, about how you don't have to be good. You just have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And Vivienne's hand moved. Just slightly, just a small flex of her fingers, but it moved. Maya's heart jumped, but she forced herself to keep reading, to not react, to not make a big deal out of something that might have been nothing. But when she finished the poem and glanced over, Vivienne's eyes had shifted just slightly. She was still staring out the window, but her focus had changed. She was listening. "You like poetry?" Maya asked quietly, not really expecting an answer, just acknowledging the moment. Vivienne didn't respond. But her hand moved again, and this time Maya was sure it wasn't random. "I'll bring more tomorrow," Maya said. That night, she went home to her tiny apartment and spent 2 hours digging through boxes, finding every book of poetry she'd collected over the years. She brought them all to Vivienne's room the next day, stacking them on the table beside the chair. "I didn't know what you'd like," she said, "so I brought everything. We'll figure it out together." She started with Pablo Neruda. Those passionate poems about love and loss and the human heart in all its messy glory. Vivienne's hand moved again. A small gesture that might have meant keep going or might have meant nothing at all. Maya kept going. She read Rumi and Hafez. She read Warsan Shire and Ocean Vuong. She read poets who understood pain and poets who understood joy and poets who understood that sometimes life was just enduring, one breath after another, until you found a reason to do more than endure. After an hour, Vivienne's head turned. Just slightly, just enough that Maya could see her profile. The delicate line of her jaw, the way her throat moved as she swallowed. It wasn't much. But it was something. Maya said softly. "I'm glad you're here with me." Vivienne didn't respond. But she didn't turn away either. That became their routine. Maya would come every afternoon. And she would read poetry until her voice was hoarse. And slowly, incrementally, Vivienne began to return. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden breakthrough. No moment where she snapped out of it and started talking. It was more like watching someone surface from deep water, rising slowly toward the light, not sure if they wanted to break through or sink back down to the quiet dark. After 3 weeks of poetry, Vivienne started turning her head when Maya entered the room. After 4 weeks, she would look at Maya directly, just for a moment, before returning her gaze to the window. After 5 weeks, she ate a meal while Maya was there, actually picking up the fork herself instead of being fed by nurses. Richard Ashford watched these tiny victories with desperate hope. He would stop Maya in the hallway and ask, "Is she talking? Has she said anything?" And Maya would have to watch his face fall when she said no. "Not yet, I can feel it, she's coming back." Dr. Montgomery remained skeptical, insisting that Vivienne's improvements were likely due to his medication adjustments rather than Maya's amateur hour in poetry therapy. Maya didn't argue with him. She didn't care who got credit. She only cared that Vivienne was slowly, painfully slowly, finding her way back to the world. It was week 6 when Vivienne spoke. Maya had been reading from a collection of haikus, those brief perfect moments of observation and truth. She finished one about winter rain, and looked up to find Vivienne watching her with an intensity that was new. With eyes that looked actually present for the first time. "Why?" Vivienne said. Her voice was rough from dessous, barely above a whisper, but it was there. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the breakthrough, the return to communication. She knew she should probably call for the medical team. Let the professionals take over now that Vivienne was responsive. But something told her that this moment was fragile, that the wrong move could send Vivienne back into her silence. "Why what?" Maya asked gently. "Why do you keep coming?" Vivienne's eyes were searching, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why do you keep showing up?" Maya thought about the question, about all the easy answers she could give. "Because your father is paying me. Because I made a commitment. Because I believe in helping people." But none of those felt true enough, complete enough. "I had a friend in high school," Maya said slowly. "Her name was Jessie. She was funny and smart and kind, and she was also completely falling apart inside. I could see it, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was 16 and stupid, and I thought that if I was just nice to her, if I included her in things, that would be enough. But being nice isn't the same as showing up. Being nice is easy. Showing up is hard. Showing up means being there even when it's awkward or uncomfortable, or you don't know what to say. It means staying when things get difficult. And I didn't do that for Jessie. I was nice to her, but I didn't show up. And one day she didn't come to school. And we found out later that she tried to kill herself." Maya's voice caught, and she had to swallow hard before continuing. "She survived. She got help. She's okay now, living somewhere on the West Coast, married with kids, posting pictures on social media of her normal, happy life. But I never forgot how I failed her. How I saw that she was drowning and I threw her a smile instead of a rope. So when I see someone drowning now, I show up. I stay. I refuse to look away. That's why I keep coming, Vivienne. Because you matter. Because you're worth showing up for. And because I'm not going to make the same mistake twice." Vivienne was silent for a long moment, and Maya worried that she'd said too much, been too honest. Broken whatever fragile connection they'd built. But then Vivienne whispered, "Everyone wants me to be okay. They want me to smile and talk and be the person they think I should be. But I don't know how to be that person anymore. I don't even know if that person ever really existed. Then don't be her. Maya said. Be whoever you are right now. Be broken and silent and lost. Be angry or sad or numb. You don't have to be okay. You just have to be here. What if being here hurts too much? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that made Maya's chest tight with fear. Does it? She asked carefully. Hurt too much? Vivienne looked away, back to the window. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to just stop existing. Not suicide, exactly, just ceasing to be. Like I could turn transparent and fade away and it would be a relief. Maya felt ice in her veins, but she kept her voice steady. That sounds really hard. Feeling like existence itself is too heavy to bear. You're not going to tell me I have so much to live for. There was something bitter in Vivienne's voice. That I'm young and rich and beautiful and I should be grateful. No, Maya said. I'm not going to tell you that. Because gratitude isn't a cure for pain. You can have everything the world says you should want and still feel empty. You can have every advantage and still suffer. Your pain is real, Vivienne. It's valid. It matters. And I'm not going to dismiss it by reminding you of your privilege. Vivienne looked at her then, really looked at her. And something in her face cracked. I don't know what's wrong with me, she whispered. The doctors keep asking about trauma. About something that happened to trigger this. But nothing happened. That's what's so stupid about all of this. I have a father who loves me. Money to buy anything I want, opportunities people would kill for. And I just feel empty. Like there's just supposed to be something inside me. Some core of selfhood. And there's just nothing there. Like I'm a beautifully decorated empty house. When did you start feeling that way? Vivienne was quiet for so long that Maya thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, I don't know, maybe always. When I was little. I was whatever people wanted me to be. The perfect daughter for my father, the perfect friend for my classmates, the perfect student for my teachers. I was so good at reading what people needed and becoming that. And somewhere along the way, I forgot to figure out who I actually was underneath all the performing. And then one day I was getting ready for some charity gala, putting on the dress, and the makeup and the smile. And I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize myself. And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending to be a person when I didn't know what person I actually was. So I just stopped. I walked out of my room and out of the house, and I kept walking until I couldn't remember where I was or why I was walking, or who I was supposed to be. And when they found me and brought me back, I couldn't find the energy to put the mask back on. So I just went away instead. Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. This wasn't a story of dramatic trauma or abuse or some triggering event. This was something quieter and maybe even more devastating. A girl who had lost herself in the process of becoming what everyone else needed her to be. You're not empty, Vivienne, Maya said. You're just buried. Under all those expectations and performances and versions of yourself you created for other people, there's a real you. And finding her's going to take time. It's going to take work. It's probably going to hurt. But she's there. I know she is. How do you know? Because emptiness doesn't feel pain. Emptiness doesn't write poetry in its head or respond to beauty or ask why. You're not empty. You're just lost. And lost isn't the same as gone. Vivienne started crying then, silent tears that tracked down her face, while her body shook with the force of everything she'd been holding in. Maya moved closer and, very carefully, put her hand over Vivienne's. The girl didn't pull away. She held on like Maya was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to water. They sat like that for a long time. Until the tears stopped and Vivienne's breathing settled into something steadier. When she finally spoke again, her voice was small but determined. Will you help me find her? The real me? Yes, Maya said without hesitation. But you have to understand, I'm not a therapist. I'm just a waitress who's good at seeing people. I can't fix you, Vivienne. I can just walk beside you while you figure out how to fix yourself. That's more than anyone else has offered, Vivienne said. That evening, Maya told Richard Ashford that his daughter had spoken. She watched joy and relief wash over his face, watched him nearly collapse with the weight of hope. What did she say? Can I see her? Is she ready to talk to me? She spoke to me about feeling lost, Maya said gently. About not knowing who she is underneath all the expectations, and I think maybe, before she's ready to talk to you, she needs to figure out who she wants to be when she does. The joy faded a little, replaced by hurt. Are you saying I can't see my own daughter? I'm saying she needs space to find herself before she can find her way back to you. Right now, you represent all those expectations, all that pressure to be perfect. She loves you, I can see that. But she's also afraid of disappointing you. Afraid of not being the daughter you want her to be. She needs time to figure out who she is separate from that before she can build a real relationship with you. Ashford looked like he wanted to argue, to demand access to his daughter, to assert his rights as a parent. But then he sighed, and the fight went out of him. How long? I don't know. As long as it takes. And you'll keep working with her. If she wants me to, yes, she trusts you, Ashford said. It wasn't quite resentment in his voice, but something close. My daughter trusts a stranger more than she trusts me. Maya felt sympathy for this man who had built an empire but lost his daughter in the process. She doesn't trust me more. She just needs me differently. I'm not weighted down with history and expectations. I'm a blank slate. She can figure out who she is with me without worrying about all the ways she might be failing to be who you need her to be. But eventually, if we do this right, she'll be able to come back to you as a whole person, instead of a collection of performances designed to make you proud. I just want her to be happy, Ashford said, and the break in his voice was genuine. I don't care about perfect. I just want my daughter back. Then give her space to figure out how to come back on her own terms. It wasn't easy for him. Maya could see that, but he agreed. And he honored that agreement even when it must have been killing him. He stayed away, let Maya and the medical team manage Vivienne's care, and waited for his daughter to be ready to see him. The work of rebuilding a person is slow and unglamorous. Over the following weeks and months, Maya and Vivienne settled into a routine. Maya would come every afternoon, and they would talk or read or sometimes just sit together. Vivienne started asking questions about Maya's life, about her mother's illness, about working at the diner. About what it was like to live in the regular world, where people worried about bills and shifts and ordinary survival. I've never had a job, Vivienne said one day. I've never had to worry about money or figure out how to pay the things. Sometimes I think that makes me less real. Like I'm playing at life instead of actually living it. Having money doesn't make you less real, Maya said. But I think maybe it gives you more room to avoid yourself. When you're working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, you don't have time for existential crises. You're too busy surviving. That's not better, necessarily, it's just different. Tell me about your job, Vivienne said. What's it actually like? So Maya told her. About the way the diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease. About the regular customers and their quirks. About the exhaustion of being on your feet for 8 hours straight. About the satisfaction of making someone's day a little better with a warm meal and a kind word. She told stories about the businessman, who had finally stopped ordering whiskey, and started ordering coffee again. Who had told Maya one day that she'd saved his life just by paying attention. She told her about the elderly woman who came in every Thursday, because it was the only conversation she had all week. She told her about the teenager with the long sleeves who had finally accepted Maya's offer to help. Who was now living with a foster family and doing better. You see people, Vivienne said. Really see them. How did you learn to do that? Maya thought about it. I think I've always done it. My mom used to say I collected strays, people who were hurting or lost or just needed someone to notice them. Maybe it's because I know what it's like to feel invisible. My mom worked herself to death trying to give me a good life. But she was always working. Always exhausted. I spent a lot of time alone, feeling like I didn't quite matter. So when I see other people who feel that way I recognize it. And I try to give them what I needed then, someone who sees them and stays. I want to learn how to do that. Vivienne said. How to see people instead of just seeing what I'm supposed to see. Then let's practice. Maya said. Tell me about the nurse who comes in the morning. Not what she does, but who she is. Vivienne frowned, thinking. I don't know. She's just the nurse. Look deeper. What do you notice about her? She has kind eyes. And she always hums while she works, these old songs I don't recognize. And there's a scar on her left hand that looks like a burn. Good. What else? She talks to me like I'm a person even when I don't talk back. She tells me about her grandson, shows me pictures. She asks my opinion on things even though I don't answer. So who is she? She's someone who's been hurt but chose kindness anyway. Someone who loves her family. Someone who sees her patients as people, not just jobs. There you go, Maya said. You see her. Now practice that with everyone. The other nurses, the staff, your father. Look past the roles and see the people. It became an exercise they did regularly. Maya would ask Vivienne to observe someone, and then tell her what she saw beyond the surface. Slowly Vivienne started engaging with her world again. Not as a performance, but as genuine curiosity about the people around her. Dr. Montgomery was forced to admit that Maya's unconventional approach was working. Vivienne was talking regularly now, eating normally, showing interest in activities. She still had dark days when the emptiness came back. When she struggled to remember why she should bother existing. But they were becoming less frequent. And she was learning to recognize them and ride them out instead of being consumed by them. I want to tell you something. Vivienne said one day. About 4 months into their work together. About what happened the night they found me. Maya's heart rate picked up but she kept her expression neutral. Okay. I'm listening. I told you nothing dramatic happened, and that's true. But there was a moment that night before I walked out of the house. I was getting ready for this gala, and I was doing what I always did. Becoming the perfect version of myself for public consumption. And I was looking in the mirror, putting on lipstick, and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't spend one more second being this empty beautiful thing, that everyone admires but nobody actually knows. And I thought about all the years ahead of me, decades of performing and pretending and being whoever I needed to be, and it felt impossible, like a prison sentence. So I walked out. I didn't plan it. I just walked. Where did you go? I don't really remember. I walked for hours. At some point I ended up in that nightclub district. And people kept trying to talk to me, and I couldn't figure out how to respond. I didn't know how to be a person without being a performance. So I just shut down. I went somewhere else in my mind, somewhere quiet and far away from all the noise. And when they found me and brought me back, I couldn't remember how to come back from that quiet place. Or maybe I didn't want to. It felt safer there. What changed? What made you decide to come back? Vivienne smiled slightly. You kept showing up. Even when I was completely gone, you were there. Reading poetry and telling stories and just being present. And slowly I started to think that maybe the world wasn't just noise and performance. Maybe there were people who could see me, really see me, and accept what they saw. So I came back to find out if that was true. And is it? Yes, you see me. Not the perfect daughter or the tragic billionaire's kid or some diagnosis to be managed. You see me as a person who's struggling but trying. And that makes me want to be a person instead of a collection of masks. Maya felt tears threatening again. You are a person, Vivienne. You always were. You just forgot for a while. I want to do something, Vivienne said suddenly. Something real. Not charity galas or ribbon cuttings or any of that performative rich people stuff. Something that actually matters. I don't know yet. But I want to figure it out. I want to find something I care about and do it. Not because it looks good or makes my father proud. But because it means something to me. They started exploring possibilities. Maya brought books about social justice and environmental activism and community organizing. They watched documentaries about people making real differences in the world. Vivienne started reading about mental health advocacy. About the ways the mental health system failed people, particularly young people. I want to talk about what happened to me, she said one day. I want to tell the truth about what it's like to have everything and still feel empty. Because I bet I'm not the only one. I bet there are other kids out there, who feel like they're performing their way through life, who don't know how to be real people, who are drowning in privilege and expectations. And maybe if I tell my story, it could help someone else tell theirs. That's brave, Maya said. And scary. Are you ready for that? No. But I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of hiding. I want to be someone who matters, who does something real with this ridiculous life I've been given. They started planning. Vivienne began writing her story, not for publication yet, just for herself, trying to articulate what she'd experienced and what she'd learned. Maya read her drafts and offered feedback, helping her find the words for feelings that seemed impossible to describe. And slowly, as Vivienne found her voice and her purpose, she also found her way back to her father. It happened gradually. First, she let him come to her room for brief visits. They were awkward at first, both of them not quite knowing how to be with each other. But Vivienne had been practicing seeing people. And she started to see her father, not as the omnipotent billionaire, or the source of all expectations, but as a man who was trying his best and often failing, who loved his daughter but didn't always know how to show it in ways that helped. "I'm sorry," Richard Ashford said during one of these visits. "For all the ways I wasn't there. For prioritizing work over you. For thinking that giving you things was the same as giving you what you needed. I know you did the best you could," Vivienne said. "And I'm sorry for shutting you out. For disappearing. For making you think you'd lost me. I did lose you for a while. But Maya helped me find you again." They both looked at Maya, who was sitting quietly in the corner, giving them space but staying close in case Vivienne needed her. "Maya didn't find me," Vivienne said. "She just stayed close enough that I could find my way back." The work continued. Vivienne started working with Dr. Montgomery on actual therapeutic interventions, now that she was present enough to engage with them. She was diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder and started a medication regimen that helped stabilize her mood. She began seeing a therapist who specialized in identity issues and worked with her on building a sense of self that wasn't dependent on external validation. But through all of it, Maya remained her anchor. They had built something that went beyond the initial arrangement. Something that felt like real friendship. Maya still came every afternoon, and they would talk about everything and nothing, about Vivienne's progress and Maya's mother's treatment. About books and ideas and the future. "Your mother is responding well to the treatment," Vivienne said one day. She had been keeping track, asking about Maya's life with genuine care. "Does that mean you'll stop coming?" Maya felt her chest tighten. She hadn't thought about it, but Vivienne was right. Her mother's cancer was in remission, the experimental treatment that Ashford's money had paid for had worked. The medical bills were covered. She didn't need this job anymore. "Do you want me to stop coming?" "No," Vivienne said quickly. "But I know you have your own life. I don't want to keep you from it. My life can include you," Maya said. "If you want it to. We started this as an arrangement. But I'd like to think we've become friends." "I'd like that too." 6 months after Maya had first walked into Vivienne Ashford's room, the girl was ready to tell her story publicly. She worked with a journalist from a respected magazine, someone who understood the sensitivity of the topic, and she wrote an essay about her experience. About feeling empty despite privilege, about losing yourself in performance. About the particular kind of suffering that comes from having everything the world says you should want and still wanting to disappear. The essay went viral. Thousands of people, particularly young people from wealthy backgrounds, reached out to say they'd felt the same way. That they'd been suffering in silence because they knew no one would sympathize with a rich kid's problems. That Vivienne's honesty had given them permission to acknowledge their own pain. Vivienne and Richard worked together to establish a foundation focused on mental health support for young people, particularly those from high-pressure, high-achievement backgrounds. They created programs that emphasized authentic connection over academic or social success, that taught kids how to be people instead of perfect performing machines. And Maya, despite Vivienne's insistence that she become the foundation's director, went back to working at Rosie's diner. Not because she needed the money anymore, The Ashfords had paid her generously and then some. But because she liked it there. She liked seeing her regular customers, liked being part of their daily lives, liked the simple satisfaction of good work well done. You could do so much more, Vivienne protested. You could finish your degree, become a therapist, help so many people. I am helping people, Maya said. Just in my own way. Not everyone needs to do big dramatic things to make a difference, Vivienne. Sometimes showing up at the same diner every day and paying attention to people matters just as much as foundation work. Can I still come see you? Anytime you want. And Vivienne did. She would come to the diner once or twice a week, sitting at the counter while Maya worked. Talking about her foundation work and her therapy and her slowly developing sense of self. Sometimes Richard would come with her. And the three of them would share pie and coffee and conversation. It became clear that what had started as a desperate father hiring a random waitress had turned into something else entirely. A real relationship. Real healing. Real friendship across boundaries of class and experience that usually kept people locked in their separate worlds. 1 year after Maya had first sat down in Vivienne's room, they met for lunch at the diner to celebrate. Vivienne looked different now, still beautiful. But in a way that seemed inhabited rather than hollow. Her eyes were alive. Her smile was real. She was present in her own life in a way she hadn't been before. I've been thinking about that first day, Vivienne said. When you sat down and told me you were going to keep showing up. I didn't believe you. I'd had so many people promise they cared, promise they'd be there, and then disappear when things got hard. But you actually did it. You showed up every single day, even when I gave you nothing back. Why, really why? Maya thought about all the times she'd been asked this question over the past year, all the different answers she'd given. But now, with Vivienne sitting across from her looking healthy and whole and genuinely curious, she decided to tell the complete truth. Because I've spent my whole life watching people disappear, Maya said. My father left before I was born. My mother was always working, always exhausted. Always just out of reach. Friends came and went. Teachers moved on. Everyone was temporary. And I learned that if you want people to stay, you have to be the one who stays first. You have to show people that constancy is possible, that someone can see you at your worst and not run away. So I stayed. Not because I'm a hero or a saint, but because I know what it's like to need someone to stay, and have everyone leave instead. And I refuse to be another person who left you. Vivienne's eyes filled with tears. You saved my life. No, Maya said gently. You saved your own life. I just sat with you while you figured out how. That's the same thing. Maybe. But it's important that you did the work. You came back. You rebuilt yourself. You found your voice and your purpose. I was just there. Being there isn't nothing, but it's not everything either. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, eating pie and watching the other customers come and go. An elderly man sat in the corner booth, and Maya caught Vivienne watching him with real attention. What do you see? Maya asked. I see someone who's alone but not necessarily lonely, Vivienne said slowly. Someone who comes here for the routine, for the familiar faces. For the sense of being part of something, even if he doesn't talk to anyone. I see someone who's lived a whole life that I know nothing about, who has his own pain and joy and history. Good. You're getting better at this. I had a good teacher. The foundation Vivienne and her father started grew quickly. They opened centers in 5 cities. Places where young people could come for mental health support without the stigma or cost barriers that usually prevented access. They funded research into the particular mental health needs of high-achieving students. They created programs that brought together young people from different socioeconomic backgrounds to break down the isolation that Vivienne had experienced. And through it all, Vivienne stayed connected to Maya, coming to the diner regularly, calling when she needed to talk, maintaining the friendship that had saved her life. She insisted that Maya be on the foundation's advisory board, valuing her perspective as someone who understood both struggle and resilience. You keep saying you're just a waitress, Vivienne said during one of their conversations. But you're not. You're someone who sees people, who refuses to give up on them, Who understands that sometimes the most important thing you can do is just show up? That's not nothing. That's everything. Maya smiled. Maybe I'm both. A waitress who sees people. There's no contradiction there. Richard Ashford, for his part, had learned something crucial from almost losing his daughter. He had restructured his life, delegating more at work, spending more time actually being present with Vivienne instead of just providing for her. Their relationship was still being rebuilt, still fragile in some ways, but it was real now in a way it hadn't been before. I owe you a debt I can never repay, he told Maya one day. You don't owe me anything, Maya said. You paid me for my time. The rest was just friendship. That's what I can't repay. You gave my daughter something no amount of money could buy. You gave her yourself, freely, with no expectation of return. That's a gift beyond price. Then pay it forward, Maya said. Give someone else what you can't give me. See someone who's struggling and refuse to look away. That's how these things work. We save each other. One person at a time, one act of showing up at a time. The story of Vivienne Ashford's recovery and Maya Chen's role in it eventually made headlines. People were fascinated by the narrative. The billionaire's daughter and the waitress. The unlikely friendship that had saved a life. They wanted to make it into something more dramatic, more exceptional, than it was. But Maya refused all interview requests, declined book deals, turned down offers to speak at conferences. This isn't about me, she said every time. It's about Vivienne and her courage. And it's about the principle that everyone deserves someone who sees them and stays. That's not unique to us. That's just being human. Vivienne, however, did speak publicly about her experience. She became an advocate for mental health awareness, particularly for the often overlooked struggles of wealthy young people. She talked honestly about her breakdown, her recovery, and the role that consistent, non-judgmental presence had played in her healing. People kept trying to fix me, she said in one interview. They wanted to diagnose me, medicate me, therapy me back to normal. And all of that was important and necessary. But what actually brought me back was someone who just sat with me. Who didn't need me to be fixed or normal or okay. Who just needed me to be there, breathing, existing. Maya taught me that I didn't have to be perfect or even particularly functional to be worth someone's time and attention. I just had to be present. And that gave me permission to come back. 2 years after that first meeting, Maya's mother passed away. The cancer had come back, more aggressive this time. And all the money in the world couldn't stop it. Maya sat beside her mother's hospital bed, holding her hand. And felt the particular grief of losing the person who had made you who you are. Vivienne came to the funeral, and so did Richard. They stood with Maya while she said goodbye to the woman who had worked herself to exhaustion to give her daughter a better life. And in the days after, when Maya couldn't quite figure out how to function without her mother in the world, Vivienne showed up. Every day. Just like Maya had done for her. I don't need you to do anything, Maya said. I'm okay. I know you're okay, Vivienne said. But you don't have to be okay alone. You taught me that. Now let me return the favor. So Vivienne sat with Maya through the grief, the same way Maya had sat with through the darkness. They didn't talk much. Vivienne just read poetry aloud while Maya cried or stared at nothing or slowly remembered how to exist in a world without her mother. And gradually, like Vivienne before her, Maya found her way back. We save each other, Vivienne said one day. That's what we do, yeah, Maya said. I guess we do. The foundation continued to grow. They established a scholarship program in Maya's mother's name, providing funding for students pursuing careers in social work or mental health care. Vivienne insisted that Maya help select the recipients. And Maya found herself drawn to the ones who had struggled, who had known hardship, who had that particular combination of empathy and resilience that comes from surviving difficult things. You're looking for yourself, Vivienne observed. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just looking for people who understand that helping others isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to sit in the hard places with people until they find their own answers. The years passed. Vivienne went to college, studying psychology and social work, determined to understand on a professional level what Maya had understood intuitively. She never lost touch with Maya, calling regularly, visiting the diner, maintaining the friendship that had saved her life. When Vivienne was 22, she opened a residential treatment center, specifically designed for young people experiencing the episodes she had suffered. She hired staff who understood that sometimes what people needed wasn't more therapy or better medication, but genuine human connection. She created spaces that felt like homes instead of hospitals, brought in volunteers who would just sit with patients the way Maya had sat with her. Maya came to the opening, standing in the back while Vivienne gave a speech about second chances and the power of showing up. Vivienne called her to the stage, over Maya's and told the gathered crowd the story of how a waitress who knew nothing about psychology had saved a billionaire's daughter, simply by refusing to quit. Maya taught me that expertise isn't everything, Vivienne said. That sometimes what we need most isn't someone with credentials and treatment plans, but someone who sees us as human beings worthy of their time and attention. This center is built on that principle. Yes, we have professional staff and evidence-based treatments. But we also have volunteers who commit to sitting with our residents, to being present without agenda, to showing up day after day just like Maya showed up for me. Because that's what saved my life. Not the therapy or the medication, though those were important. What saved me was someone who refused to give up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. The audience applauded, and Maya felt tears on her face. She hadn't set out to change anyone's life. She had just shown up, day after day, because it seemed like the right thing to do. And somehow that small, simple act of consistency had rippled out into this. A treatment center that would help hundreds of people. A foundation doing real work in the world. A young woman who had found herself and her purpose. After the ceremony, Richard Ashford pulled Maya aside. "I've never properly thanked you," he said, "for giving me my daughter back." "You've thanked me many times," Maya said. "Not properly, not in a way that captures what you actually did." He paused, and she could see him struggling for words. "I had all the money in the world, and I couldn't help her. I hired the best doctors, the best therapists. Provided everything she could possibly need. And none of it worked. It took someone with nothing but time and stubbornness to actually reach her. That humbled me. It taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They can only be given freely, from one person to another. I think you've learned that lesson," Maya said gently. "I see how you are with Vivienne now. How you actually show up for her instead of just providing for her. That's what she needed from you all along. Better late than never." Exactly. That evening, Maya drove back to her apartment. Back to her life as a waitress at Rosie's diner. Some people thought it was strange that she hadn't leveraged her connection to the Ashfords into something more impressive. That she hadn't finished her degree, or started a career in mental health, or done any of the things people expected. But Maya knew something those people didn't understand. She knew that there was dignity in all work. That serving coffee and pie to people who needed a kind word was just as valuable as running a foundation or giving speeches. She thought about all the people she'd met over the years of working at the diner, all the small kindnesses exchanged, all the moments of genuine human connection. She thought about the businessman who had stopped drinking, the lonely elderly woman who had made friends through a community group Maya had connected her with, the teenager who was now in college and doing well. None of those people would ever be in a news story. None of their healings were dramatic enough for headlines. But they mattered just as much as Vivienne's story mattered. The next morning, Maya showed up for her shift at the diner. She poured coffee, took orders, wiped down counters, and paid attention to people. She noticed the new customer sitting in the corner booth. A young woman with that particular look of someone who was barely holding it together. She saw the way the woman's hands shook as she held her menu, the way she stared at the words without really seeing them. Maya walked over with a pot of coffee and a gentle smile. "Mind if I top you off?" she asked. The woman looked up, and Maya saw the same thing she'd seen in Vivienne's eyes 2 years ago. That look of being lost, of drowning in plain sight, of desperately needing someone to see her. "I'm Maya," she said, filling the coffee cup. "And I'm here if you need anything. Anything at all." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I don't even know what I need," she whispered. "That's okay," Maya said, "and I have to know. Just know that I see you. And I'm not going anywhere." She pulled out a chair and sat down, the same way she had with Vivienne all that time ago. She didn't know this woman's story. Didn't know what had brought her to the point of breaking. But she knew that sometimes the most important thing you do was simply refuse to look away. "Tell me about yourself," Maya said. "Not what you do or where you're from. Tell me who you are when no one's watching." And the woman began to talk. Haltingly at first and then in a rush, and Maya listened the way she'd learned to listen over years of paying attention to people everyone else overlooked. She saw her, really saw her, and made the silent promise she'd made so many times before. "I'm here. I'm staying, you matter." Because that's what Maya did. She showed up. She stayed. She refused to quit on people, even when they'd quit on themselves. It wasn't dramatic or heroic. It was just being human in the best way she knew how. And somewhere across town, Vivienne Ashford was doing the same thing in her own way. Sitting with a patient who hadn't spoken in weeks, reading poetry aloud, refusing to give up. She was doing what Maya had taught her, seeing people. Staying present, understanding that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is your consistent, non-judgmental presence. The story of no one being able to reach the billionaire's daughter, until one waitress refused to quit, wasn't really about a billionaire's daughter or a waitress. It was about the fundamental human need to be seen, to be valued, to matter to someone. It was about the extraordinary power of ordinary consistency. Of showing up day after day even when there's no immediate reward, no visible progress, no guarantee of success. It was about refusing to let people disappear into their pain alone. And it was a story that kept being written. Every day in small acts of attention and care. In diners and treatment centers, in hospital rooms and corner booths. In all the places where people were struggling and other people chose to stay with them through the struggle. Maya went home that night and wrote in her journal. Something she'd started doing after her mother died. "Met someone new today," she wrote. "She's hurting. I don't know if I can help, but I'm going to try. I'm going to show up, like I always do. Because that's what we do for each other. We refuse to quit, we refuse to look away, we stay." She closed the journal and thought about Vivienne, about how far she'd come, about the life she was building, that was genuine and purposeful and real. She thought about all the people Vivienne would help through her foundation and treatment center. All the lives that would be touched by her refusal to let her own suffering be meaningless. And she thought about the woman in the diner. Whoever she was, whatever she was going through. Tomorrow Maya would go back to work. And the woman might be there or might not. But if she was, Maya would sit with her again. And the day after. And the day after that. Because some people are worth showing up for. And really all people are worth showing up for. The story ends where it began, with the understanding that we're all just human beings trying to navigate impossible difficulties, with insufficient tools. Some of us have money and some don't. Some of us have credentials and some don't. Some of us have resources and some have only ourselves to offer. But all of us have the capacity to see each other, to stay with each other, to refuse to quit on each other. When quitting would be easier. That's the message Maya Chen carried with her every day as she poured coffee and served pie and paid attention to people. That's the message Vivienne Ashford built her life around, the lesson she learned in her darkest moment and never forgot. We save each other. Not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, though sometimes those help. We save each other through small, consistent acts of care. Through showing up, through staying, through refusing to look away, one person at a time, one day at a time, one cup of coffee, one conversation. One moment of genuine human connection at a time. That's how we make it through. That's how we build a world where no one has to suffer alone. Where everyone has someone who sees them and refuses to quit. And if this story has touched you, if you've ever felt unseen or needed someone to stay, then remember that you can be that person for someone else. You don't need credentials or training or expertise. You just need to show up, to pay attention, to care. Because in the end, that's all any of us really need, someone who refuses to quit on us until we remember how to not quit on ourselves. If this story moved you, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're building a community of people who believe in showing up for each other, who understand that small acts of consistent care can change lives. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, look around your own life for the people who need someone to stay with them through their darkness. Refuse to quit. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for their Maya to show up. Someone is drowning in plain sight, hoping that someone will notice and stay. Let that someone be you.